We are now facing the next big financial crisis, and you and I are both involved. Just like the housing crash of 2008, it's only a matter of time before this bubble bursts too. Currently, Americans owe more than $1.3 trillion in student loan debt. That's the highest debt, second only to mortgages. Last year, 7 out of 10 bachelor's graduates left school with some kind of debt. The average amount of that debt was $37,000. My purpose today is to tell you the difference between public, nonprofit, and for-profit schools, from where they get their funding, and to tell you the truth about the business of higher education for profit. Public schools receive some of their funding from tuition, but the majority of it comes from state and local taxes. They're typically run by the state. Nonprofit schools get the majority of their funding from tuition, but they do get some assistance from the government in the form of tax breaks and student loans. They are typically run and managed by a board of trustees. For-profit schools are managed by companies that are beholden to their shareholders and investors. They are privately run and exist in part as businesses designed to earn a profit for their owners. Even though they're run as businesses, they're still eligible to receive 90% of their funding from federal aid. According to a report done by Senator Tom Harkin, chairman of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, taxpayers are currently contributing more than $30 billion a year to these companies. Now that's a lot of money, so you would think that the quality of education these students were receiving would be the best around. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Senator Harkin's report also revealed exactly where these institutions are spending their money. On average, 22% of their revenue went to marketing, advertising, and recruiting, while only 17% actually went to education. The average CEO's salary was $7 million. That's 7 times the average salary of a president at a typical public university. According to onlinecolleges.net, in 2010, the University of Phoenix spent an average of $400,000 per day on Google advertisements, while only spending $900 per student the entire year. In 2009, the Government Accountability Office sent undercover students to 15 of these for-profit schools. What they found was shocking. 4 of these schools encouraged fraudulent practices, such as falsifying financial aid documents. And all 15 were found guilty of making deceptive or questionable statements to the undercover students. Remember that 90% of their funding comes from federal aid, paid by the taxpayers. In the case of federal student loans, the student is expected to pay back the government. But tuition rates at for-profit schools are 19% higher than that of public schools. 96% of for-profit school students will take out student loans, and more than 1 in 5 of them will default within 3 years. For-profit schools prey upon prospective students by using aggressive recruiting tactics, such as making deceptive promises or harassing phone calls. Some of the most vulnerable targets are veterans and service members. As I said before, for-profit schools can only get 90% of their funding from federal aid. But because of a loophole in the legislation, the GI Bill and DoD tuition assistance are considered private funds, and therefore they can fall into the 10%. This effectively makes me and my brothers and sisters in arms dollar signs in uniforms. Most people want to go to college to prepare themselves for a better life. They need institutions that are on their side, that have their best interest at heart, that won't promise big but deliver little more than a piece of paper and a lifetime climbing out of debt. There are things that we can all do to help fight back against these businesses. First, get involved in government. Tell your congressperson. We need better oversight over these institutions and exactly where they spend the financial aid they receive. use your voice, and use your vote. I have 2 friends who worked at 2 different for-profit schools, and they both quit, in part because they couldn't bear working under such unethical practices. They both helped influence my decision to attend a nonprofit school. And that brings me to my final and most important point. Talk to your friends and family. If anyone you know is considering going to college, warn them about the predatory nature of for-profit schools. Encourage them to choose a public university or a nonprofit school. Your biggest tool is your personal experience. And congratulations, you're attending a nonprofit school right now.